name is Jo. I'm going to be talking about plastic. That's right. So, what is it? How much is out there? How much is in the ocean? How does it affect us? How does it affect our environment? There are so many questions. Unfortunately, they don't all have clear answers. So, there is an enormous and expanding range of products created by plastic, from paper clips to spaceships. It's replaced things like wood, metal, and glass. The International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry has defined plastic as a polymetric material that may contain other substances to improve performance and/or reduce costs. So plastic is a synthetic organic polymer. Now, with the connotations regarding the word organic these days, that could be slightly confusing. But in chemistry, organic simply means the presence of carbon. And since we know that plastic is created from petrochemicals, we can see that link to carbon, right? So let's go on a little journey. The year is 1839. Charles Goodyear, a self-taught chemist, was experimenting with crude rubber and sulfur. He created a tough, durable, heat-resistant substance. Moving forward to 1870, John Hyatt created celluloid. Now things like photographic film, dental plates, and ping pong balls are possible. Then in 1909, Leo Baekeland synthesized the first truly synthetic polymer, Bakelite. Formed from phenol and formaldehyde, this substance was heat and electricity resistance. Great! Now we've got things like phones, auto parts, computers, jewellery. However, plastic has induced our current disposable society. Single-use items that we throw to this mystical place we call away. So the threat to the environment of plastic was actually ignored for quite a while. In 1974, the British Plastic Foundation said plastic litter is a very small proportion of all the litter and causes no harm to the environment except as an eyesore. Plastic is buoyant, easily dispersed, and persistent. All the reasons why plastic is so good is also why it's so bad. So today it's widely accepted that 80% of all plastic created on land ends up in the ocean. 80% of all plastic in the ocean originates from land. And the rest of the plastic in the ocean comes from fishing boats, like ghost nets and charter boats. 50% of all plastic produced is intentionally disposable. So this graph kind of shows what things are made by plastic. 40% is packaging. Just think about that next time you're in the supermarket. Right? So I'm not saying plastic's not useful. I mean, if there was no plastic, I wouldn't be here giving you this speech right now. But the way that we need to use it needs to be reconsidered. So while I was researching and while I was traveling, I saw countless pictures like this. This was actually taken by a colleague of mine in the Gili Islands when I worked there. So I guess away might be kind of closer than we think. So many people have tried to quantify how much plastic is out there in the ocean, and there are no great estimates, scientific ones anyway. Plastic in the ocean can be counted via beach surveys, water samples, water trawling, and then that data is put into computer models, and then we create an estimate. So here's a couple. It's actually easier to estimate the amount of plastic we produce. So we've got some estimations from Plastic Europe. 1.5 million tonnes to 299 million tonnes produce plastic. That was in 63 years that it increased by that much. Shore surveys have showed the worst country is Sicily, with up to 231 items of plastic per square metre of beach. And then I guess a more recent one, 2014, it was estimated 5 trillion pieces of plastic in the ocean. So although we don't know exactly how much, we know that it is a problem. This graph shows the worldwide contributors to plastic in the ocean. So it said that China contributes 3.5 million tons of plastic debris into the ocean per year. But it doesn't really matter who creates the plastic, because the ocean has currents that carry debris that accumulate in swirling vortexes of trash, which we call gyres. And what about that storm that hit China last week, right? Imagine what that effect had. So stuff that starts in China is probably going to end up somewhere over in West America anyway. It is said that 267 species is affected by plastic by either getting trapped or ingesting the plastic. Seabirds. There's been studies done on over 1,000 seabirds in the USA. 55% of them were found to have ingested plastic. And the most alarming result from the study was that the birds preferred a certain shape and colour. So red is often underrepresented in samples because birds mistake red for prey. And it's especially detrimental to chicks that receive their food via regurgitation, like albatross. So this problem might be a little bit closer to home than we would have expected. In the Chatham Islands, there were storm petrels found deceased containing plastic pellets, and that was in 1982. So ingestion of plastic, not just by birds but all animals, affects gastric blockage. It can have a decreased hunger, which results in decreased energy, reproductive failure, as well as other effects. So these kind of pictures are just all too common these days, and I think that the worst thing is that once the animal dies and degrades, that bit of plastic just gets recycled back into the system again. So yes, this is a problem, but there's a much bigger problem, or I should probably say much smaller problem, which is microplastics or nanoplastics, which are much less studied. So plastic can degrade via wave action, UV rays, swirling currents, or microplastics can just originate from things like your clothes or cosmetics, cleaning products. Even these new 3D printers have been found to let off micro bits of plastic with no filter. These bits of plastic, they don't just disappear. They get smaller and smaller and smaller until they represent the planktonic species that make up the base of our food chain. Sometimes even the plankton mistake the plastic for food. So in the North Pacific Gyre, it was found that plastic outweighed plankton 6-1. But hang on a minute. How did you even come to this conclusion? I mean, if it's hard enough to quantify the big plastics, how do we quantify the small ones? So there's these things called stereo microscopes and Fourier transform infrared stereoscopes that people use to try and figure out what's plastic and what's not. And they require highly trained individuals to use them. Even so, a study last year by Song and his colleagues found that there were inconsistencies between these two machines. So again, we don't have a number, but we do know that it's a problem. These microplastics have a higher surface area, so they're easier to accumulate chemicals, which do make their way up the food chain, and yes, that includes us. So the literature is absolutely riddled with supporting studies of this, which I could talk about for hours, but you guys want to know how this affects you, right? PET, PVC, nylon, polystyrene, polyethylene, polypropylene. These substances make up 90% of produced polymers. They are known causes of cancer, birth defects, skin disease, liver dysfunction, among other stuff. We have known this since 1996. And yes, there are more studies that show these chemicals are not only present in adults, but in babies as well. So I just very quickly want to touch on two other kind of alarming implications that I found. One is the debris on the ocean floor. So in 1995, a study done in Tokyo Bay found that the debris on the sea floor, 80 to 85% of that was plastic. And that's pretty impressive because plastic floats, right? So when the plastic is on the seabed, it interferes with gas exchange, which can interfere with the normal ecosystems. That study was done over 10 years ago. Where else could this be? Plastic is also a known vector of disease in invasive species. Coral fish are now found in the deep ocean gyres, where they don't really belong. And also, plastic may have been a vector for a skeletal eroding disease now found in corals in the Caribbean and also Hawaii. So this all leads me to the question of what can we do about it? There are 313 TED Talks on plastic. My two favourite ones, Boyan Slat, who created an idea when he was 18 to clean up the ocean. He created a stationary floating barrier that utilised the ocean currents to collect and concentrate the rubbish to be removed. Now, he's received so much critique for this idea, but he's still persisting, and he says, you know, this is no longer a problem for future generations. We are the children of today, so what are we going to do? And then the other one, which I really like, Barbara DeVise, who is a designer. She's worked for Calvin Klein, and she found beauty in beach plastic, and she made a collection that ended up in Vogue. And she says, if diamonds are forever, then maybe beach plastic, which will last forever, can also be loved forever. So that is some of Barbara's designs there. Adidas has just brought out a shoe that uses ghost nets as its design, which is really cool. And these two bags are made by my friend in the Gili Islands, who created a company called Seamade, and she takes plastic bags off the beach and she irons them and makes reusable ones. And I mean, there's so much other stuff that I've seen recently, like these old ladies in the US knitting blankets out of plastic bags and giving them to homeless people. You know, you can just do simple things like that. So anyway, the research suggests that prevention is easier than cleanup. So guys, it's simple. Say no to single-use plastics. Don't litter. Take your own bags. Get creative. Inform other people and get involved. So my charity, Project Aware, they've just launched a global debris survey. You can adopt a dive site and regularly go and snorkel or dive there. Fill out this survey of the debris that you find, and then you can upload it to a global database, which is a really cool, fun thing to do. So my last question is, what are you guys going to do about it?
Eat more plastic.